Hi, thank you all for being here. Today's conversation is part of Accounting Alchemy Network's ongoing discussion series on alternative ways to fund our common resources. And our topic this month is centered around affordable housing. And I'm delighted to have my good friend Jessica Martin here with us today. Welcome. Thank you for being here. She recently created a policy brief document where, well, she calls it Rooted and Rewarded. And it's an idea for a voluntary tax credit framework for individual relocation to what Jessica is calling revitalization cities. And we'll learn more about that in a moment. And I want to read a little bit to you from the document to kind of set the scene. So Jessica writes that America faces two simultaneous and interrelated crises, and a housing affordability emergency in its largest cities, and a slow economic decline in hundreds of smaller cities and communities across the country. Conventional solutions like rent control, corporate tax incentives, top-down development programs have repeatedly failed to solve either problem in a lasting way. And there's another way to approach this, a tax credit that rewards people to relocate to revitalization cities and build genuine roots from there. And it works not through mandates or corporate subsidies, but through compounding personal incentives that grow the longer a resident remains in these cities. And I'm really excited to hear about this. We also have some other members of Accounting Alchemy Network here with us that will be able to have a discussion, ask questions. If you're watching this on the replay, we're going to upload it to, well, you're probably watching it on YouTube. So if you have any questions about this or want to chime in, please do so in the comments. And yeah, Jessica, welcome. Could you please tell us a little bit about yourself and like what inspired this tax credit idea?
Yeah, so first of all, my name's Jessica Martin. I'm the founder of Velocitor Concepts, and I have a history, broad background of project management and communications. And I do a lot of different volunteering with a lot of different law enforcement agencies in the past. And so my whole thought process is to be of service. And I think when it comes to um, policy and even politics in general, we're just not as informed as maybe what we should be. And for us to become informed, we have to go to such lengths to find and to dig down and see what the core concepts are and the truth. And how this came about was I was scrolling through social media, and of course, I've watched the news here and there, and everything is so unbelievably divided. And even it's very heavy on the left and it's very heavy on the right, even internally, like inside the government. And over the past, I don't know, several years, I've just found myself frustrated and also increasingly become more angry. And I think a lot of us have felt that because we feel like our hands are tied. And I did slip into, well, I don't know what I can do. And the truth of the matter is, I still don't know what I can do, but I started brainstorming. And the specific event that inspired this was listening to Mondami in New York talk about trying to maybe possibly do rent control and some other very dramatic efforts. And then I realized, well, why would people be against this? So then that's when I started digging in and trying to do more research and figure out from an economic standpoint or even a community standpoint, what would be some of those pros and cons? And how does that affect a lot of different people, not just the landlords, but the city, taxes, and start trickling down from there. And then started brainstorming with myself, well, why couldn't we do this? And then I started finding different policies or different programs. And so I decided to start arranging all of this information into my very first policy brief, which was very intimidating because I've never done anything like this. And it honestly, I was totally out of my depth. But
It
I
doesn't
started.
look like it. Like looking at the, I was like, wow, oh, okay. You sent it to me. I'm like, whoa, okay.
It took me a hot minute to put it together, and believe it or not, this is version 4 of it because once I put together a rough draft of it, I sent it to family members, some officials, and a small group of friends because I just wanted to hear what the everyday person would think about it, or if I wasn't adding any validity to anything. And I actually had a few people respond, have some great conversations about it, which also prompted me to do some more research because there were a couple of other points that had come up, other programs, such as the HUD program, that I had not heard of or did not turn up in my research. And so this was my final version that I decided that I wanted to send out to everyone and start sending to local officials and even get to the state officials just for conversation. And the whole part, the wow. The whole piece of this that I'm most proud of is it's completely bipartisan. It's human focused and community focused, and it's not a short-term fix. It's a long-term incentive, and it really focuses on the household versus corporations and time in a community that is not sustainable or can be outlived. And then come that full circle of, well, where are all the people going now that the corporation is not there?
Yeah. Wow. Great point. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, and I'm wondering if we can just kind of start by reviewing this together. Maybe, I don't know, I'm happy to share on my screen or um I was thinking like just kind of going through the main points of the document, but maybe starting a conversation. Have a couple people here in the room with us, like maybe as we're reviewing this, some questions can come up. I wrote some questions down as I was, you know, helping prepare for this. So all right, let's go for it. So share screen. Can you see the document?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. And I'll like make it a little bigger. Do you mind leading this or?
Yeah, so you kind of hit the nail on the head, kind of starting with the executive summary, and I have a footnote there that really focuses on the piece that's most important. It's not a program that would tell anyone where to live. It's a program that makes choosing somewhere generally worth it and becomes a worth staying moment. And you know, I think that that's most important because everybody is focused on such extreme measures that it really forces, whether it's forced taxes, rent control, forced to be in the system when someone maybe not needs to be in the system. And by the system, I mean maybe the welfare system or different support systems that are available. And then kind of going into the root cause is housing. And it's just in my thinking, we don't really have a housing issue, we have a concentration issue. We have so many people in very specific targeted areas, whether that's generational, whether it's people that have moved there for a job. There are a lot of different root causes for that, and it's creating challenges in major metros because there are only so many people that can fit in a finite space. And especially when you start taking other considerations into or other points of information into consideration, like zoning laws and just space itself. and then look at quality of schools, the quality of neighborhoods. And we have, and then cost, right? Just the cost to the home, the household. I'm going to use the word household because that can cover a
Hmm.
lot, singles, marrieds, cohabitants, whatever.
Yeah,
Um, but I just started thinking there's got to be a better way to get people throughout the country. We have a ton of space, and COVID really opened our eyes and helped us to understand what jobs can be remote. Not everyone needs to be in an office.
yeah,
And if companies are really dedicated to having a diverse staff, then and they have the infrastructure to be able to have a cohesive remote staff, then why not let people start spreading their wings and move out, and have more space, more time with family, a different lifestyle that maybe they've dreamt of but thought was out of reach. Um,
for sure.
so we
Yeah.
have, oh, go ahead, go
Oh, I
ahead.
was just gonna say there's a couple of crisis one and crisis two that you outlined here. So you were saying, like you were just saying, concentration in major metros, how sorry, I keep jumping around, but it says like median rents in Manhattan now hover around $5,000 per month. And like you said, zoning restrictions, just lots of causes contributing to this. And there's also these uh, hundreds of American cities um, who have the infrastructure, land, lower costs of living, um, just not a lot of attraction, right,
Yeah,
to
and
them.
a lot of that, people have moved out for jobs. They have, corporations have come in and augmented the population, but then some of those corporations have gone, or
Mm,
manufacturing has been moved elsewhere, and so those people tend to follow the corporations as well.
right. Yeah. And so you have here then the proposal, rooted and rewarded. So it's a voluntary federal tax credit program that incentivizes individuals and households, not corporations, to relocate to federally designated revitalization cities and build genuine roots there over time. Um, so do you want to go over this a little bit?
Yeah, so I started thinking, we have all this space. We have other cities that are underpopulated with great infrastructure. So why aren't people there? And $5,000 in Manhattan, just as an example, is very different spent in maybe a smaller, 3 million people city in Texas.
Oh, yeah.
Texas or even the Midwest, for that matter. And how would it change? So then I started, as I was going through the research, there were other, one of the programs that they put in place was the Oklahoma project. I need to look at that, the name of it, but
Oh,
it was,
is it somewhere here? Or...
yeah, it's just right underneath here.
Oh, by the way, you have mouse control if you want to try and.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Um, I don't remember where it is in the document, but it's where I kind of outlined some of the research and some of the links. But it was an
Oklahoma.
incentive to move people to
Gotcha.
Oklahoma for a year or two, and then they were rewarded cash, I believe, anywhere from 500 to, um, 25,000, depending on what their household looks like.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It was the Tulsa remote. That's what it was
Aha.
that they did in, 2018. And they were able to attract more than 3,400 participants. And what it did for the local economy, even in that short amount of time, was it generated over $600 million in local economic activity. And that is substantial for a small city. So
Hmm.
I got to thinking, what would really revitalize a place? And I've moved a lot in my life. And when I have, for a long time, I never lived anywhere really more than 2 years. And it wasn't until I started finding a little bit more stability that after 2 years, I was starting to find other job opportunities, starting to make friends, have social circles. And then at 5 years, at the time, I was married. So then that started kind of evolving. And, other people during that time would probably get married, have children. Well, then you want to really start working on the economic development in your area by theory. And then at the 10-year mark, after living somewhere for about 10 years, it really does become your home and you're fully invested into the community, to your children's education, or, maybe even getting more outdoor space. I mean, everybody has their service, right? So that's how I came up with the breakdown of the tax credits. So households, if they move to a designated revitalization city and they were there for 2 years, they would get the base tax credit, and that would just be based off of a certain formula that the government uses for different programs. And then after 5 years, then they would get an increased tax credit, and that would be for the household. But if they had any dependents living in the house at that time too, that they were taking care of, that would be 18 years or younger, then they would get a more of an incentive. And the same thing for 10 years. So at 10 years, then they would get the max tax credit. If they still had dependents living under the roof, 18 or younger, then that would also give a little bit more of an incentive. But that really lends to the amount of time that it would not only revitalize an area, but make it sustainable over a longer period of time.
Hmm. Yeah. Good, good, good. And then let's see. I guess as we go along, like, does anybody want to chime in with any questions? Anything popping up? Um,
I've had quite a few thoughts popping up. Hi,
yeah.
Ijana.
Hi.
And like one of the things you said, Jessica, that you've moved quite a bit. And I'm wondering, and I'm fortunate, I haven't had a chance to read the whole thing, so maybe it's here. But what about the statistics around we just don't move as a society? Most people move within, or what did I write in my notes? In the same state, I saw something around, I don't know if it was a census page that said we don't usually move more than a couple 100 miles. So, are you anticipating that it's really about us shifting around in a local area? So, I live in Maryland, maybe moving out to Western Maryland or to the Eastern Shore, or something like that. And then the other thought I had, just thinking of that example, Black woman not moving to the Eastern Shore, it's not racially diverse, and it has a poor racial history. And even currently today, there's still some unfortunate activity around race that still happens in my area, but I could see a need for something like this there. So, has that been incorporated in there, or is this something that your briefing prompts in terms of deeper conversations and discussions, either regionally or nationally?
No, that's a great conversational piece because there would be, and this would have to be research on the cities that would be considered revitalization cities. And there wouldn't be just a small cluster because the point is to really mobilize people out of the heavily concentrated areas. So there could be some revitalization that could happen outside of the major metropolitan. And I did think about some of the different areas where there is a lack of diversity, whether it's racial, economic, otherwise. And all of that would be taken into consideration in the research that would take to choose these areas. And the fascinating point about this is that it would maybe allow generational families to move somewhere else to have more space, whether it is even making it a multi-generational home, which is becoming more popular. Um, I don't want to say becoming more popularly, returning to being popular again, and because it makes more sense. But maybe it would allow more land and more autonomous living. But then also it would bring more diversity to some of these areas long term. So I'm not saying that there wouldn't be growing pains, but everyone could look at the cities that are available and decide what would fit for their household or what they are willing to pioneer, because this really would attract people that have that pioneering mentality about them and are really kind of exhausted from their existing day to day, and look at this as an opportunity to be part of that tipping point to maybe even stabilize the US and minimize that gap between socioeconomic political views.
Yeah, something you just said also got me thinking that somebody who hasn't moved might feel called to move as a way to, we all can drive change in our little ways. And somebody might find that I can move and that's going to help drive change. But I won't march, right? I can't give up my job and go do something that doesn't require income, but maybe this is something I can do and taps into, like you just said, a little pioneer self that has always wanted to move but couldn't find a justification. So I can totally see something like that really offering somebody an opportunity to be a change agent in a meaningful way that can also bring something new to their life. So it can be meaningful, and personally rewarding, not just because of this, but in a holistic way.
Absolutely. And as more communities have more diversity and even reach more sustainability, they would graduate out of this program, opening up other areas. So everyone that has moved there will continue to receive those tax benefits through the 2, 5, and 10 year. But then the city itself, once it reaches a defined point, then we move, or, we, the people, move to other cities that need more more revitalization, more sustainability. And so then we just kind of start keep that going, and before you know it, we have more balanced populace in theory. That's the idea, right?
Yeah.
Balance
Can
and
we talk? Oh,
diverse.
go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry,
Uh,
Lena.
oh, good. I was gonna share the document again and just say, can we talk a little bit about what you wrote here about criteria for these revitalization cities? Because that was one of my questions, is like, what does that mean, you know?
Yeah, great question. I didn't realize a lot of this, and this was part of being on version 4 of this, is that I didn't realize that there were certain metrics that when different programs are created, that they look at. So, for instance, population trend, net population loss over the preceding 10-year census period. That would be a infrastructure ready place, location, probably with 3 million or less people and that are dropping. The median household income below 80% of national median. And I had to look that up too, because I'm like, okay, what is that? What does that mean in layman's terms? And it would be a standard that the standard federal benchmark used by HUD specifically to identify low to moderate income communities. It's currently about $64,000 annually based on a national median of $80,000. So for the income levels that have dropped as well as population, those are the areas that you would want to bring more income into. Better schools. It'd have to have enough household vacancy. It'd have to have also a vacancy rate of available housing of more than 10%, because you don't want people to move somewhere and not be able to find housing. The unemployment rate would also be figured into finding these cities or designating these cities. Infrastructure capacity, we've talked about that. And then the designation review, reviewing it every 5 years, putting together the census information, making sure that it kind of keep your finger on the pulse of the program. Is it working? Is it revitalizing? And maybe, at some point add to it. But this is something that could be passed through multiple administrations. And I
Mhm.
actually have listed out, I don't want to jump too far ahead, of why the conservatives and the liberals or the progressives would find it equally appealing as well.
Yeah, I really like that part. Do we want to jump there now, or do you want to keep going with this?
No, I mean, I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, I think there might be something in the chat.
Yeah, I dropped it in the chat, but I'd say skip it because I'd really love to hear that the how this is attractive across party line because that's one big challenge we currently have, which is getting past the
Right.
partisanship and
Mhm.
actually talking to each other.
Yeah, Ingrid is, we can get there. Ingrid is also asking, how is this different from gentrification? How do we protect those in poverty from being pushed farther into the margins?
Well, nobody is mandating that someone move. These will be people like had mentioned earlier with a pioneering spirit that would look at this for as an opportunity to move wherever they're curious. They would have a list of cities to choose from. And it's not like we're going to move, or it's not like they would be moved or choose to move into the middle of the Midwest, and maybe be faced with people that are completely different from them. And when I think of the word gentrification, and you can correct me on this, that's kind of forcing people by pricing them out of areas to move and to be pushed and further marginalized. This is a volunteer program, and help um, it would help cross over the tipping point. Does that make sense? Sorry, I got distracted when I saw the chats pop up.
Ingrid,
Yeah,
Janelle, does that
I
any of that?
saw that. To Ingrid's question, I see this as the white flight side of migrations and movement historically. When I think of white flight, I think of people trying to manage the tipping point manually. And again, that's forcing people to do things that they don't want to do or forcing people out or excluding people. White flight also historically has been creating fear or a false narrative around what would happen to the neighborhood if other races moved in. And that was generated falsely to provoke white flight as well, historically, the way I understand it. And again, this would be well thought out. It would be cities that have infrastructure. Again, they're not moving people to or asking people to move to anywhere that they don't want to move. They have the choice. They can do the research in the cities, the diversity, whether it would be a lifestyle that they would like or not, but it would open up opportunity and choice for people who may not feel like they have any other choice other than to stay where they are.
Yeah, and we welcome further questions or points on this.
Did I
But
answer that okay? Did that answer everybody's questions or concerns?
Yeah, I think it was it certainly opens up the conversation. I didn't want to make this just about race. I remember I just saw that as one of the factors, and there's a lot that has to do, especially in today's climate, immigration and race as a narrative around what's happening to your point that you said, in our communities, and then how that might be driving people to move or push people out. But I think there's so much more to this. And this is a wonderful way to spark a conversation. It might address those things, but it's not coming at it because of those things, which can shut down a conversation. Because as soon as you start talking about that, people, they close down, they shut down, right?
We can't venture into that area
Yeah.
of conversation. Yeah.
Yeah.
But in the Jana, I don't know if you saw it in the document, there is a section of why it works. There is some science and some data behind the design, and some of this is already in motion and has been trending. This would just open up to more possibility versus people that are in the HUD system, versus corporations. It really makes it accessible to everyone that is seeking a change and a change of lifestyle and something better for their household.
I had a different question in there, and maybe I'll just sort of highlight it, but maybe hold off on it if you're going to talk about the bipartisanship. One of the things I thought about is governments I can see where you're trying to revitalize the community are all for it. And then the localities where they're losing population potentially or might argue that they're going to lose population. I can't imagine that everybody's going to leave one city to the point of economic decline, but I can see people making that argument, right?
Yeah. And I thought about that too, because a lot of cities thrive off taxes, right? That's taxes, income from a variety of ways. But the Tulsa remote project, I mean, they had 3,400 people nationwide take advantage of it. In the grand scheme of things, we have billions of people. And this might even create a litmus test of how are the cities spending their money? Are they really diving into the details and understanding where that money and where that budget is and what it's being spent on and the effect of what it's being spent on? Is it positive, negative, or is it nil? Maybe that would gently encourage cities to refine their budgets and really start finding better solutions, more sustainable solutions to their challenges. And each city has different challenges, whether it's space, housing, education, I mean, you could go on that. We have lists, right?
Yeah. Do we want to go over these bipartisan proposal section that you have here?
Yeah, certainly. Before we kind of skip down to that, the section right above that, it talks about the behavioral economics of staying. Um, I had never heard of behavioral economics, and it makes sense because we have behavioral studies for everything. But in the past 4 years, I have read some fascinating books, and kind of where that science is and where it's going. And I think it's still grossly overlooked. But most of the things that we do are not rational. Um, but especially when it comes to finances. And this is a great way for people to kind of move and to start setting up roots and figuring out what needs to be changed and becoming an active, like you said, Jana, a change agent. And then families as community anchors, that people will always become more involved and care about their neighborhood more. And even from an educational standpoint, even in cities, if you look at how many people get frustrated with different schools, how many charter schools or STEM schools, or, how many different elevated educational opportunities happen. But what would happen if they did that at the public school level and really brought more economic stimulus to that area? It could further develop our educational system and create a whole different long-term outcome for trade schools, professionals, professional services, everything. So now to kind of dive into the bipartisan part of it. And I looked at this from the standpoint of, what does everybody want? From the conservative case, nobody wants to be forced to do anything. When you start forcing people to do something, it's instantly, it's just not going to work because none of us want to be told what to do. Um, Market-driven migration should be guided by personal choice and have a financial incentive. Maybe people are at that cusp of like, I'd like to move, but how do I afford to do this? How realistic is that? And that should be, that again, provides a little bit more freedom of choice. It rewards individual initiative and commends a long-term commitment. It also helps to promote small business creation and private sector economic growth, which can be unstable at times.
I have
And
a
then,
question.
yeah,
Actually, to that point, sorry to interrupt. But I was thinking about this, about how we're kind of like moving resources to this area that needs it. And I guess one of my fears with this is that these that money will end up being funneled out somehow. The economic growth from people from this revitalization maybe won't stay in the community. And I guess that's why I was seeing that with like the private sector. Um, and I guess I'm really thinking of this in terms of like, oh, there's more people moving to this area. And so now we've got um, real estate investors that are coming in, right?
Oh, is Cass's voice kind of breaking up, or is that just my computer?
no, it's breaking up for me too.
Oh,
I think
Cass, you
I gotta stop my video. Is that better?
a little bit, yeah.
Okay. I guess my thinking here is like just are there ways in here of making sure that the revitalization that's happening actually stays in the community and in the population that was already there rather than new businesses coming in to then pull the resources out and send to investors far away? I guess that's one of my concerns.
It's a great question. I can tell you, I don't have an outright answer because nothing is flawless, but it's based on the household and it's based on that household living in that community for 10, 5, and 10 years, or 2, 5, and 10 years. So naturally, that money is going to be spread around inside the community. As far as investors coming in or buying up, I mean, it's possible, but there's no people there, and they wouldn't be able to take advantage of the program because it's not based on their household. Does
Okay.
that,
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes
okay,
sense.
okay.
I guess I was just seeing like, I guess I was thinking from like really from a real estate. I was thinking of housing and I was thinking about real estate investors of coming in and really end up increasing the housing,
Oh,
So
which
in
would eventually I guess increase the prices and then that would indirectly push people out, perhaps.
So in the revitalization cities, there is a housing vacancy rate that would be taken into consideration, and that residential vacancy rate would have to be above 10% for it to be considered a revitalization city. So I doubt, I could be wrong, but I doubt as this starts that any real estate developers would come in and start buying up things without a proof point of people wanting to actually move. The whole stimulus and the revitalization would be the act of people moving and lifting the community up. if
Well,
I'm understanding your question.
and I wonder if there can be some kind of protective measures, you know, in place to prevent that from happening. Like if we know that abuse can happen, like how can we create additional policies that prevent, I don't know, real estate investors from buying up properties just so that they can like gouge up the rates. Because that would kind of, well, that wouldn't do what very well with this whole plan, right? Uh,
Exactly. Honestly, it was not something I had considered. I think it's a great question, and maybe that can be woven in as kind of a stop guard, as
mhm.
stopgate.
Yeah, I see solutions there in terms of thinking about new and different ways, to create regulations. My concern is like we start to regulate differently. So we end up having a lot of other regulations, and like there would be a regulation banning certain types of development. But there's no perfect solution here. But I can
Mhm.
see, to your point, Alina, what would the regulatory environment look like in order to protect the integrity of this program?
And I maybe what I'm thinking of is I was talking to Alina about this. There's new laws that were recently passed in Scotland to really combat income inequality. But the how that actually looks is contracts or really anything that they need will be the contracts that will get prioritized are local people, co-ops, things of that nature. And it keeps the wealth that we're building, the revitalization that you're building in the community. I don't know, there's some interesting stuff that's coming out with some stuff like that that could be woven in a way that kind of helps safeguard that. And I'm really just I'm thinking about this situation from my experience when I lived in South Atlanta. Um, we had vacancy rates that I don't know if it would be considered, um, if it would meet the revitalization guidelines that you're talking about here. But, I quickly saw things change and investors come in and the city looked revitalized and there was more happening there, but so many people got pushed out. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm just sensitive to that and thinking about, yeah, good ways to make sure that the people that are there are actually benefiting, from the revitalization and it's not getting extracted somewhere else.
You're on
Oh,
mute.
you're muted, Jess.
I was just saying that that is something definitely to think about. And also, I don't know how, um, if if it's under revitalized, just kind of thinking out loud. Um, I don't have the experience that you have of seeing kind of, it sounds like what happened in your area was very much gentrification. So I don't know how this would fall into, and Jenna, you asked that question as well, or Ingrid did, but I don't have an answer for it. And even just thinking through, I mean, it's possible, but maybe there are some other solutions that could be woven in as, preventive measures to ensure that it doesn't happen. I just don't know. It would take a lot of people kind of coming together and actively solution finding, poking holes in it, and having their experience and knowledge of revitalization and where it has been successful. This is kind of a high level of trends that are already developing and helping to support people to move and kind of spread out. So I don't know. It's a great question.
All right, thanks. Sorry for derailing us.
That's okay.
It's interesting you said derail, Cass, because so often we talk about what's the vision we want to see versus what are we trying to repair. And I think it's a bit of both. And I I don't know. We're also primed to see the solution as a fix to something broken. And how do you also share this as a vision to pursue or move toward? I got no answers. Just thinking from, I thought the word choice is very telling about we're still trying to figure this out. Yeah.
And it's a great semantic also because it's not derailing. It's just proposing something else, a different side of the coin. And that's why we're here having the discussion. There's no right or wrong. There are only ideas and a path forward. Because we certainly don't want to continue going sidestepping or going backward. And there's nothing that's going to be, the end all fix all, but at least we can start finding stronger solutions and asking questions based off our experience because we all have different experiences. So bring it. Keep it coming.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for chiming in and getting ideas and asking questions. Jess, so we have about like 7 minutes left. Do we want to kind of run through the rest of this and then see if there's any remaining thoughts? Or like, one of my questions was like, how can we support you, or what, what's your next action step, or what ideas are you looking for? Yeah.
Well, I would encourage everyone to read through it and just start thinking of questions, poking holes in it. I have already started sending it out to my local networks. I've started sending it out to local politicians, to state politicians, and I think it just needs to open a conversation of what other truly bipartisan solutions that we can come up with that really focus on the human and the household and freedom. That's something that I feel like everyone feels like is being tested. And so it's a win-win for all is the idea. And I know I don't want to be, what's the word, where it's like always or never. It's not for all.
Polarizing.
Yes. This would be something that just to start talking about and thinking about. And if you have ideas and you don't know how to participate, start doing your own research and figuring out how to get your peers involved, whether it's this or if it's a whole different issue. Maybe there is something that hits closer to home that you're super passionate about and kind of start the same process. And we have the protesters. That's great. I think I can't remember who said it earlier. Maybe it was Jana, but I'm not a protester because for me, I can't see how that helps me get closer to a solution. And that's just my own personal view. But for something like this, it's more tangible. I can feel it. I can have conversations about it, and I can have people poke holes in it and ask the hard questions. Like, I don't know. I
Yeah.
just don't know.
I mean,
But let's talk through it.
that's what we're doing here at Accounting Alchemy Network is we're asking the question of what's mine to do. And we're kind of following our heart. And as we have these conversations, each of us gets inspired in our own unique ways to take action. So kudos for, transmuting your anger and frustration into something practical and actionable, and like actually bringing it out into the world, whether it's right or wrong or perfect or not, Um,
And maybe
Definitely.
it goes somewhere and maybe it doesn't. I don't
Yeah,
know, but hopefully it'll inspire at the very least.
Well,
for sure.
I think this is wonderful. And when I first was reading about this, I was thinking about how I've recently heard somebody talk about how little pockets of coherence, because right now the world feels wild. And what do we do about it? And I totally agree with you about the protesting thing. Like that's not, yeah, that's not the way, that's not the role I'll play in the revolution. Um, but like creating small pockets of coherence eventually will create larger groups of coherence. And that's kind of what I feel like this is. moving energy kind of where it needs moving, like flow. And I don't know, I have like a lot of really cool visuals about what this is. Like I wish I could draw it. But
Wish
I
I
think
could
it's
too.
beautiful, Jessica, and I love that I love that you put this together, and I'm so sorry for missing the first 20 minutes. But this is wonderful. Really
Well,
cool.
take it. If there's somebody that you feel that would benefit, or maybe would send it to everyone. Even if it's poking holes or adding things to it, or I don't know. We're all connected, right? So now we're just trying to get the energy to flow out and hopefully flow better and stronger.
I have a question real quick before we kind of wrap up, or folks have ending thoughts. If somebody is curious to have a conversation with you about this or have questions or something like that, are you open to additional questions? And if so, where can people find you or contact you?
Oh, that is a great question. I could put my email out there, but how about connecting with me on LinkedIn?
Yeah, there you
Because
go.
that would be easier and a
Okay.
lot easier to manage. So it's Jessica B. Martin on LinkedIn. Feel
We
free
can put
to
your link in the description of the YouTube video for the
beautiful.
profile. That's
Yeah,
a good way. Cool.
yeah.
Does anyone have any ending thoughts, uh, questions, words? Thank you, Jess.
You're welcome. Well, thank you all. I love that it's the accounting alchemy, right? Because alchemy is very much what we're doing right now is creating that change from the basic foundation up. So let's get chemical, everybody.
Yay. Thank you. Well, I'm not seeing anybody else chiming in, so Cass, did you want to say
Oh,
something?
I already said how much I'm grateful for this, and I love what you're doing and throwing some things out there. And I'm excited to kind of dig more into this and maybe see what kind of like safeguards could be included to kind of help make sure that the revitalization stays in the communities because I think this is really, really cool.
And
I,
who knows, maybe it would even encourage more single family homes to be built again.
yeah,
Especially
and
for the smaller households like me, I don't need a 3,000 foot house.
need is an interesting word in today's society. I'll add one final thought. It's a quote that came to me a long time ago that obstacles are only something you see when you lose sight of your goals. And I think starting the conversation, you can't hit a target that you can't see, right? So starting the conversation helps us identify where we want to go, and then the obstacles become just things we got to get around. We'll figure it out. So I love that.
I love that too.
Thank you. Lovely. Well, yeah, join us again at some other time, at some other conversation about something about activism or another one of our funding common resource conversations. And yeah, thank you for being here.
Thank you, ladies. Appreciate you.
Thank you.